Tourist bitten by tiger at Malta Zoo, hospitalized, an academic calling on the president to ignore his democratic duty in the upcoming cannabis legalization bill, and finally the AFM saying, investigating sexual harassment in Malta's armed forces is not their remit following some very serious sexual harassment allegations. All this and more on today's episode of Lovin Daily. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm Julian Bonnici. Joining me today is Matt Baldacchino. We've got another exciting show for you today, but very important, stay tuned to the very end of the show. We've got a really nice video message from Eileen Montezine, the winner of the Lifetime Achievement Award in this year's Lovin Social Media Awards, powered by Dragonara Casino. On to our first story, quite a shocking story out of Malta Zoos. An individual who was treated at Mater Dei Hospital after being bitten by an exotic animal was actually bitten by a tiger at one of Malta Zoos. So, all this information came out this week thanks to some very helpful parliamentary questions from Nationalist MP Mario Gallia, who asked Health Minister Chris Fenn whether it was true that a person had been admitted to Mater Dei Hospital after being bitten by an exotic animal. Chris Fenn confirmed the detail, saying that it was actually in fact a tiger who did so. However, little other information was given about the incident, such as when it happened, what sort of injuries the person sustained. It was actually a little bit murky. Now, several sources who are actually really well informed in the industry have told Lovin Malta that happened at the wildlife park in Imtahleb, and the injured person was a foreign visitor to the park. Fenn actually insisted that he actually had only suffered minor injuries, though we don't know really what the state of this person is. However, what it did was certainly raise some very serious questions over whether the present lack of regulation is sustainable in the long term. So Mario Gallia has in recent weeks been quite a vociferous critic, trying to sort of say, zoos must be regulated. They even actually said that they should be banned at some points, saying that Malta is simply not a place for exotic animals to live. Now, Gallia has been really pressuring Animal Rights Minister Anton Refolo after backtracking on new plans to implement regulations that would have introduced a wide range of requirements, including mandatory neutering, microchipping, an insurance policy, 24-hour CCTV footage, as well as the prohibition of petting of wild animals at zoos. The regulations were withdrawn following pressure from the zookeepers themselves, with Anton Refolo now saying, that an impact assessment of Maltese zoos had been commissioned. Now, I don't know about you, Matt, it actually raises quite a lot of concerns. What it does prove, yes, there is a major issue. People are allowed to get in exotic wild animals, open up a zoo with little to no regulation. I remember a few years ago where a little boy was mauled by a tiger. Yeah. We simply cannot accept anymore that the zookeepers are somehow experts in keeping wild, dangerous, exotic animals, and something really needs to be done as soon as possible.
Yes. First of all, let's not forget the impact assessment that was promised by Anton Refolo does not have an end date for completion, so it's on us to make sure that we do see this assessment to the end. There's also the discussion to be had of whether these animals should even be here in the first place, right? But that's a discussion we won't be having today. We'll move on to our second story. As Parliament nears cannabis legalization, academic calls on the President to ignore democratic duty. Speaking earlier today on Facebook, the Faculty of Social Wellbeing Dean Andrew Aptsopardi shared a Facebook post with 9 points of contention at the new proposed cannabis bill. He said, quote, "An appeal to His Excellency President George Vella to refuse to sign the cannabis legal reform on these criteria." Now, it's important to know that although ceremonial in form, the presidency does require that they sign every bill before it becomes a law. Of course, this calls into question the sort of right for the president to ignore his democratic duty, as has happened in the past. Julian, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, as you said, this has happened in the past before, George Abela actually had refused to to sign a civil unions bill. Thankfully, he actually had to resign and had to be replaced, by Marie-Louise Colero-Preco just a few days after, so he was never really forced out of the position. What this thinks of is a last-ditch attempt, right, from the anti-cannabis legalization lobby, who are trying to, fearmonger and sort of put as much pressure as they can. I'm still a bit worried about it. George Vella, as we know, has actually said he would refuse to sign certain bills as a matter of conscience. Most crucially, he said if there was any bill of abortion that came to my desk, he would flat out refuse to sign it. So it's obviously opened up the doors for people like Andrew Azzopardi to make, such an extreme demand. However, for those of you out there who are a bit worried and stuff like me, George Vella can refuse to sign. It's the absolute truth. But what will happen? Simply, he will be removed, resign, and someone else will be put into his place until that person will approve the law itself. On that note, it's on its last legs. It's soon coming towards the end. Really positive reform from our end. So let's hope it gets, it's actually seen through. On to our next story. Malta's armed forces have said that investigating claims of sexual harassment and assault within its rank does not fall within its remit. Now, this comes after really damning revelations by Lovin Malta that a member of Malta's armed forces is facing very serious allegations of sexual harassment after sending a series of sexually explicit images and videos to a former lover, harassing her online. We've seen a lot of details. It's actually quite shocking to see a member of the armed forces act like this, with some photos actually sent in the barracks wearing his uniform. Now, at the time, the Armed Forces, the Home Affairs Ministry and Brigadier Geoffrey Cormier all refused to reply to questions sent over the issue. However, the AFM has now issued a right of reply, making very little reference to the allegations themselves. Now, while the AFM categorically denied receiving the videos themselves, Lovin Malta has seen emails showing that they actually were informed of this incident. In the statement, they sort of say, like, listen, the AFM has a completely different role than the police. The police should be investigating, and the woman should have gone to the police before raising the issue in general public. The AFM should know that it actually wasn't the woman who reached out to us. We actually spoke to a lot of people about this who are very concerned about the conduct within the Malta's police force. And it really raises my concerns that, this issue was first raised in February, and the AFM still hasn't opened any kind of internal inquiry into the allegations, into the conduct of all their officers, and it seems this culture of omerta, this sort of club between them, will continue for the time being. It's really sad to see, even the officer most recently was in the Poppy Day parade, so really showing their support of this individual, even though, the case is really shocking. Read about it on lovinmalta.com.
Yeah, in an age after Me Too and Time's Up, this is extremely shocking and very disappointing. Not only is it creating an unsafe space for these people to work in, and victimizing those who are victims of assault even further, it's putting people in power in a position where no one can tell them anything and they can't be held to account, right? At the very least, an independent investigation should be organized by the AFM, and that's just a minimum bare requirement. So, that's my opinion. Fourth story of the day, the Joint Monitoring Board for Mizip and Ahrash was never set up. A bit of context for this story. In 2020, a contract was signed between the Lands Authority and FKNK. Basically, this saw FKNK being the principal overseer of the Mizip and Ahrash lands. One of the stipulations within this contract was that a Joint Monitoring Board would be set up. This development obviously comes soon after a Lovin Malta investigation into allegations that the handover contract was being breached by FKNK. Speaking to Lovin Malta, Councillor Ivan Castillo told us that no member was ever asked to be on the board, as it has not been created by the Lands Authority. This, obviously calls into question the legitimacy of said contract and the people who are running the oversight of said lands. What do you think?
Yeah, it's actually really raising a lot of concerns that illegalities are rife, and the contract is being breached. The contract itself, for those of you who don't know out there, actually had loads of spelling mistakes in it as well. I think they even called Malta Mala and all of this stuff. It was actually a bit comical, To be honest, I'm really disappointed. FKNK at the time, and even the government, really praised this guardianship deed over these lands, saying, these lands needed to be taken care of, which admittedly they did. did. However, a year later, there's litter everywhere, illegalities are still continuing in the thing, signs haven't been erected, picnic areas haven't been set up, and this is more than a year later. I remember at the time, people were saying, this is just a smokescreen to give hunters complete control over this land. And I hate to say it, that every day, every week, it's seeming more and more like the case. Now, I know people in FKNK, there are actually many good people in there, many good hunters, and I think the message out there should be, it's up to you people, to finally start policing yourselves, as in the government has given you all this land, with the electorate completely ignored, and now it's time to take responsibility over your actions, Hopefully things will improve pretty soon. Lovin Daily is going to be following the case. Anyway, on to our last story. It's a sad, but quite a interesting look, at some of Malta's most colourful people throughout history. Mary Collinson, who was one of Hugh Hefner's Maltese Playboy models, has just passed away. Very sad news to the family and everyone who knew her. So Mary Collinson and her sister Madeleine made waves in the 1970s, who at the time, remember, Malta was a really conservative country. If you think it's conservative now, back then it was a million times worse, but still they became the first set of twins to be chosen as Playmates of the Month in the magazine. A weird notch in the history books for another Maltese person, but quite an interesting, quirky story. The cover was a success and jump-started their modeling career, and while they might only be known for the cover and the topless shoot that came with it, they actually had quite a successful career in movies, starring in a series of Hammer horror films, including Twins of Evil, including Some Like It, Sexy, Groupie Girl, and The Love Machine. So they had actually really, really successful careers. Mary just passed away on 23rd November 2021. She was aged 69. And her sister Madeleine had passed away 7 years earlier. So the Collinson twins were born on 22nd July in 1952, born and raised them in Blanchlead, Sliema. However, they left to London, to find hopes of, acting, modelling in 1969. Their careers quickly took off, within a year they were already on Playboy, and actually made quite an impact with the Hef himself, with Hugh Hefner even calling them his little bambini at the Playboy mansion. So, yeah, quirky story, very sad loss, and it's important, to remember these quirky characters.
Yep, condolences to Mary's family, obviously. That brings us to the end of today's show. Before we let you go, a quick reminder that the Lovin Daily Social Media Awards powered by Dragon Hour Casino ended today. We had the issuing of our final award. Local icon Eileen Montezine was the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award, and we have a special message from her which we'll play at the end of the episode. For those of you who don't know, Eileen Montezine is truly one of the pillars of local media, making her start on radio and TV and breaking well into the social media sphere, so very well done to her. We'll also be hosting the Social Media Awards Q&A Black Carpet coming this Sunday, along with our very exclusive after party, so stay tuned for more updates on that end. For now, this has been Matt Baldacchino and my co-host Julian Bonnici, and have an evening full of lovin'.
Nixtieq minn qalbi nirringrazzjakom ta' dan l-unur, inħoss li lum il-ġurnata f'dik li hija karriera l-ħaqt il-pik tiegħi u allura li niġi onorata b'dan il-mod. Iċċi rasa fuq il-kejk, irrid minn qalbi ngħidilkom a very big thank you. Jien għamilt ħajti kollha fuq il-palk, fil-medja u issa anki fis-social media. U allura ifisser illi dak li dejjem xtaqtu l-ħajti kollha sa minn meta kont naqra ta' tifla. Illi nkun viċin in-nies, illi nagħti gost lin-nies, irnexxieli nilħaq lan ta' ħajti. U kieku jkolli nerġa' nitwieled, nagħmel kollox eżatt l-istess. Thank you. Inħobbkom.